It was a pale December afternoon in 1945, when the sea near Florida seemed unusually still, like a sleeping predator. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting long bruised shadows over the Naval Air Station at Fort Lauderdale. The war had ended, but the air still tasted of gunmetal and memory. In Hangar 5, 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers stood lined like silent guardians of a world that was already slipping into something colder, darker, more uncertain. Flight 19 was scheduled for a routine 3-hour navigation training run, out to the Bahamas and back. A flight so common, so simple, that no one paid much mind. But that was the last day the world would ever see those men, or their aircraft again. 19 lives swallowed whole. No wreckage, no bodies, no answers. The commanding pilot that day was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a seasoned combat veteran, though something about him had been off for weeks. His crew had whispered about it, about how he talked in his sleep, how he stared too long at empty skies. His file showed he'd flown over the Pacific for years, survived kamikaze assaults, and had earned the Navy Cross. Yet now, with peace finally in reach, the shadows had crept into him. That morning, he almost refused the mission. "The sky's not right today," he reportedly told the flight officer, his eyes unfocused, as though reading from some script only he could see. But orders were orders. He boarded the lead plane. The flight took off at 2:10 p.m., slicing through the light like daggers of steel. At first, everything proceeded as planned. Check-ins were punctual. Course corrections were acknowledged. The last normal transmission was received at 3:30 p.m. Then something changed. Taylor's voice came through the radio, agitated. "We can't find West. Everything looks wrong. ... Strange. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should." Was confusion in the tower. They assumed Taylor had lost his bearings. They asked him to describe his surroundings. The response was chilling. "We can't tell where we are. Everything is ... white. It's like we're flying inside a cloud, but there's no cloud. The sea is ... glowing. Glowing." Reports from civilian fishing vessels near the Bahama Bank that day would later mention a column of light rising from the water. Tall, narrow, silent.
Our Navy.
The Navy dismissed it as imagination. But within 15 minutes, all communication with Flight 19 ceased. The planes, the men, and whatever they saw, gone. A search and rescue aircraft was launched, a massive PBM Mariner carrying 13 crew members. It vanished 30 minutes after takeoff. Radio contact was lost. A faint Mayday signal was intercepted off the coast of Bimini, but by the time coordinates were traced, there was nothing. Just open sea and the scent of ozone. Within hours, Fort Lauderdale's command was in chaos. Admiral Andrews, then head of the Eastern Sea Frontier, reportedly ordered all logs sealed and transferred to Washington. An internal memo would later be uncovered. Its heading read, "4 eyes only, cold file initiated." Publicly, it was ruled a navigational accident. Secretly, it became something far more sinister. The first documented Cold War anomaly of the Western Hemisphere. And thus began the legend of Flight 19. A training mission. A man haunted by dreams. Glowing ocean. A rescue plane lost in the same sky. All within one day. All within one invisible corridor of water. Some say it was pilot error. Others speak of electromagnetic storms or gas pockets. But those who were there, those who still remember, they talk in hushed tones of the sound. A low humming that vibrated through the bones felt more than heard. Just before the sky cracked open. Whatever happened that day wasn't weather, wasn't war. It was something else. Something that watched, that waited, and when the moment came, took, and Charles Taylor, he never spoke again, because no one ever heard his voice after 3:45 p.m., not even the dead. In the weeks that followed, the Atlantic whispered strange things. Fishermen spoke of ghost lights flickering above the waves. Navy sonar operators reported phantom echoes, entire squadrons of metallic signatures appearing, moving, then vanishing like phantoms just beneath the surface. At 03:00 hours one December night, a classified submarine patrol reported a contact. 5 blips. Flying in perfect formation, at a depth impossible for aircraft. or any known vessel. The Navy called it a glitch. But the sonar technician who filed the report, Petty Officer William Horn, went AWOL 3 days later. His apartment was found torn apart, pages of sea charts scattered across the floor. The phrase, "The sky is in the sea," scrawled over and over in black ink. His body was never found. Meanwhile, behind thick walls in Washington, D.C., the Office of Naval Intelligence was dissecting every scrap of information. Transcripts, radar logs, weather anomalies, pilot health records, all poured into a new directive under Project Astraca, an ultra-classified cold war initiative to track and contain aerial anomalies that defied known physics. And at the center of their investigation stood the final transmission. From Flight 19, one never released to the public. At 3:43 p.m., 30 seconds before total radio silence, Charles Taylor's voice cut through the static with a single line. Choked, urgent, disbelieving, "They're not clouds... They're watching." What followed was a burst of distortion. Then a screeching noise that technicians later described as a backwards whispering. An audio engineer assigned to analyze the tape quit after 3 days, citing auditory hallucinations. He reportedly tried to remove his own eardrums with a screwdriver before being institutionalized. By January 1946, the public story was cemented. Pilot disorientation, fuel exhaustion, and Atlantic weather claimed Flight 19. Case closed. But inside Project Astraca, something far colder took root. Declassified memos from the 1980s revealed that the region where Flight 19 vanished had been flagged. Years prior, not by the U.S. Navy but by the Germans, Nazi U-boats patrolling the Bermuda Triangle during World War II had reported geometric disruptions in their magnetic compasses. One commander wrote in a personal log, "We float, but the stars shift. It is as if the Earth is no longer fixed." What haunted the ocean wasn't just what it took, but what it gave back. In April 1946, nearly 5 months after the disappearance, a Liberian freighter passing near the Bahamas made a distress call. It had recovered wreckage. A section of aircraft fuselage bearing U.S. Navy markings, partially fused, as though melted. Inside, tangled in wires and rust, was a set of dog tags. Taylor. CE. But when the Navy retrieved the wreck, the fuselage bore a tail number that didn't match Flight 19. The aircraft didn't exist. No one had ever logged it. No pilot had ever flown it. The records ended in 1943, but the corrosion on the metal was fresh. As if it had touched water only days before, someone was sending pieces back. And Taylor's tags, they vanished again. The technician who cataloged them, Ensign McBride, died in a car fire a week later. The tags were never recovered. His last note, found in his locker, was scrawled on the back of a radar printout. It read, "They fell up. The ocean gives and the ocean keeps. But not like nature. Not like logic." Whatever claimed Flight 19 was not a storm, nor a failure of man. It was an intelligence, or a machine, or a wound in the world itself. And the deeper they searched, the more reality began to fray. Because soon, the echoes started coming not just from the sea, but from the sky. 3 years passed. The world moved on. The Cold War tightened its grip on the globe, cloaking paranoia beneath flags and nuclear codes. Flight 19 was a ghost story told among young cadets, a cautionary tale about the ocean's appetite. But then, in the summer of 1948, a man walked out of the Everglades. He was barefoot, his clothes torn, caked in salt and mud, his skin blistered, his hair white as ash. Local fishermen found him kneeling beside the water, murmuring coordinates that looped endlessly, like a broken prayer. 29 north, 79 west, 29 north. And questioned. He gave a name, Lt. Charles Edward Taylor, but Charles Taylor was declared dead. And this man, he hadn't aged a day. His fingerprints matched Navy records exactly. His dental records were identical. His blood type, scars, even a bullet wound he'd received in the Pacific War, all confirmed. But it wasn't the same man. He didn't remember the war, didn't remember his family. When shown photographs of his crew, he recoiled as if the images burned. He spoke of a sky that turned inside out, of stars that moved like insects, of a sound that grew teeth and whispered names he'd never heard but somehow always knew. The Navy confined him to a medical facility under the jurisdiction of Project Straka. Files declassified decades later refer to him only as Subject 19A. The official story: a mentally ill imposter. Case closed, but the notes tell another tale. He could speak a language unknown to any linguist. He described technologies that wouldn't exist for 40 more years. Materials that bent light, engines with no moving parts, machines that could swim through gravity. His eyes would change color under artificial light, from green to silver to something else, something that shimmered like oil on water. The doctors began to refuse their night shifts. One nurse claimed he never blinked. Another saw him levitating, just for a moment, before the lights in the entire compound went dark. Subject 19A never attempted escape. He merely waited, sitting, watching, silent. Until, one day in November 1949, he whispered a single sentence to the surveillance microphone embedded in his cell wall. "They're coming back." That night, the compound lost all contact with the outside world for 72 minutes. When contact resumed, his cell was empty. The footage from the surveillance room was unrecoverable, not damaged, not erased, but overwritten with frames of pure static and something else. Embedded in the distortion were symbols, fractal, recursive shapes, not found in any known language. Mathematicians attempted to decode them. One committed suicide 3 weeks later. Note was only a number: 19. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, just a smell, like burnt copper and roses. And something scrawled into the condensation on the inside of the observation glass: "The horizon folds inward." That message became the motto of a new classified division within Project Astraka. One never acknowledged in any official record. Astraka 19. Its mission: not to find Flight 19, but to understand where it had gone. By then, it had become clear. They hadn't disappeared. They'd crossed, and one had found his way back. But returned in the body of Charles Taylor, was no longer entirely human. In the years that followed, Astraka 19 became a shadow within a shadow. Its agents did not wear uniforms. Their files were handwritten, never typed. They did not report to the Pentagon. They reported to something older, buried deep beneath Langley, behind doors locked not by keys, but by silence. They scoured the globe for echoes of the impossible, and in 1952 they found one. A remote island in the South Pacific, marked only as Point Seraph, uninhabited, unmapped, yet from its shoreline. They recovered an aircraft engine half submerged in black sand, an Avenger TBM, fused with coral, humming faintly with residual heat, though untouched by flame. Etched into its side, scorched by time and salt, was a phrase: Taylor was right. Beneath the engine was a skull. Human. Intact, preserved, carbon dated to exactly 7 years prior. December 5th, 1945. Only one problem. It belonged to Ensign George Pauline, one of the Flight 19 crew. And yet his DNA was partially synthetic. OSTR aka 19 began to unravel. Reports emerged of similar anomalies, echoes of Flight 19 bleeding into other places, other times. A civilian pilot flying over the Bermuda Triangle in 1961 swore he saw 5. World War II era planes flying in tight formation, their engines silent, their cockpits empty. An oil rig off the coast of Puerto Rico picked up a distress signal on a long-abandoned military frequency, one matching Flight 19's last known call sign. But the most disturbing event came in 1967. A transmission, brief, fragmented, intercepted by a naval listening post in Iceland. The voice was unmistakable. It was Taylor's, slower now, strained, hollowed out by distance and something ... inhuman. His words were simple. Croaking, "We are still flying." Then silence. By then, those few remaining within Straka 19 began to suspect the unthinkable, that Flight 19 had never crashed, that the pilots were still alive, or trapped in a loop far beyond time, flying endlessly through a corridor of space fractured by forces unknown. Not alive, not dead. Not even ghosts. Just motion. Perpetual. Aimless, like dreams without dreamers. In 1971, Project Astraca was officially dissolved. Files were incinerated. Witnesses silenced. Its final report was a single paragraph, handwritten, with no author listed. The sea is not deep enough to hold what we've seen. Time is not strong enough to forget what was taken. Some skies should never be flown. End protocol. Fold the horizon, and so it ended. Or did it? Every year on December 5th, near the coast of Fort Lauderdale, civilians still report strange formations in the sky. Radar echoes, with no sources. Lights beneath the sea. Low hum too deep for the ear, felt in the chest like a memory trying to surface. And some say that on certain nights, if the wind cuts just right and the moon hangs crooked over the Atlantic, you can hear the drone of propellers, 5 of them, circling overhead, fading into a sky that no longer remembers their names. Flight 19 was not lost. Flight 19 was claimed by something older than war, older than time. A fold in the world, a door with no frame. And it is still open.